Hi, I'm Carl Azus. It's always great to have you watching CNN 10 as we get you up to speed on world events. This March 7th, we're following up on a story we reported on February 12th. It concerns what's being called the last stand of the ISIS terrorist group in the Middle Eastern nation of Syria. ISIS, an acronym for Islamic State in Iraq and Syria, once controlled a large amount of territory in those two countries. But fighting by those nations' militaries, local militias, and international teams, including a coalition led by the U.S., have almost completely driven ISIS out of its strongholds. The battle in the eastern Syrian village of Baghouz has been raging since mid-February. There are signs it's coming to an end. Within the past couple days, hundreds of ISIS fighters have surrendered to Syrian Democratic Forces, a group supported by the United States, and it's fighting ISIS on the ground. The ISIS terrorists were part of a wave of thousands of people who are fleeing Baghouz. When the village is finally recaptured from ISIS, and a commander says that could happen within a few days, it'll signal the end of ISIS's territorial control, which once included 7.5 million people over an area the size of Portugal. Still, even with civilians and terrorists flowing out of Baghouz, a United Nations committee estimates that tens of thousands of ISIS members are still scattered across Iraq and Syria, though they're not part of this battle.
The final battle to take that last slice of territory occupied by ISIS. Now, what you're seeing behind me right now is trucks with ISIS members and their families and others who are leaving that encampment, that last encampment. Those are men in the back of that truck. According to officials at the Syrian Democratic Forces, since this morning alone, more than 800 people have left that area. That includes ISIS fighters and others. And anyone left behind is going to be coming, or has been in fact, under constant bombardment. Airstrikes, artillery, and mortar rounds rain down upon the so-called Islamic State's miserable realm. Reduced to a ragged cluster of tents, wrecked cars and trucks, perhaps just a half-square mile. Despite the onslaught, people, men it appears, can be seen walking among the tents. The U.S.-backed Syrian Democratic Forces have given up trying to estimate how many people, all fighters they say, are still there. The pounding carries on around the clock. There is no rest for the last holdouts. Midnight and the earth shakes. Night into day, the onslaught continues. ISIS lived by the bullet and the bomb, and by the bullet and the bomb, it is dying. And that's been 800 people since this morning, but now we're seeing truck after truck of people. It does appear, and many of them, in fact, we saw from the trucks there, many are men are inside. So it does appear that there are far more civilians inside that little speck of land, a half-square mile, than anybody thought.
It's been almost exactly 5 years since Malaysian Airlines Flight 370 vanished, and international investigators don't look like they're any closer to solving what's become one of aviation's greatest mysteries. Malaysia's Prime Minister says his country plans to continue searching for the plane, and the families of the missing continue to meet, as they did recently, to support each other and to keep international attention focused on the disappearance. There were 239 people aboard the flight from Malaysia's capital to China's. Those two countries, plus Australia, spent an estimated $150 million in their official search for the plane. They didn't find it. And a second attempt to locate MH370, carried out by a U.S. company called Ocean Infinity, wrapped up last year, also without answers.
The missing airliner that disappeared on March the 8th, 2014. After the flight left Kuala Lumpur, bound for Beijing, then dropped off radar an hour after takeoff. Later, satellite data showed investigators that the plane had continued to fly for up to 8 hours and finally crashed in the Indian Ocean off the Australian coast. The experts narrowed the crash site to around 120,000 square kilometre search zone, an extensive and exhaustive effort, including a deep ocean search, found no sign of the aircraft. Then, over several years, debris confirmed to be from MH370 has washed up along the eastern African coast. Still, the main body section, the fuselage of the plane, remains missing.
10-second trivia. Which of these automobile brands is not manufactured by General Motors? Buick, Chevrolet, Saturn, or GMC? This is a bit tricky. The answer is Saturn. It used to be part of GM, but it was shut down in 2010. The last Chevy Cruze has rolled off the line at a GM plant in Lordstown, Ohio. It's a community located between Cleveland and Pittsburgh, and its economy benefited from having a General Motors plant there. But the company closed the factory this week. Its CEO says Americans aren't buying as many sedans like the Cruze, so GM, like other U.S. car companies, is shifting toward making more trucks and SUVs, which are also more profitable. The landscape for American auto workers has been changing for decades. There's been increased competition from Japanese car makers. Some U.S. companies have outsourced jobs to Mexico. Whether GM will use its Lordstown facility to make another vehicle or give it up altogether is a highly important question for both the workers and the local economy itself.
It'd be a shame for them to shut it down after 52 years. I would love to see my daughter or one of my other kids get in out there and follow their grandfather's footsteps, their mother's footsteps, their uncle's footsteps.
I'm out here protesting the pending closure of this plant. God bless you and empower you. And here these workers that are honking their horns know what's at stake.
There's no doubt GM has been really important to the overall economy for the past 40 years. Their potential loss is devastating to the economy. A bigger impact is associated with the fact that it's estimated as many as 3 to 4 jobs are directly dependent on each job at an auto manufacturer. That's the equivalent of a 4 to 5% increase in unemployment in a relatively short period of time.
As each day goes by, it's more of a reality check, knowing that we're almost done. I've been wearing that badge for 18 years. I am in the trim department. I do left side carpet retainers. We do build quality cars. It is a pride thing.
It's hard to just get retrained in a new set of skills to be able to work in other industries that are hiring. And oftentimes those jobs involve less pay and worse benefits.
I don't have a problem going back to school, although I'm a lot older than, kind of old. If that's what it's gonna take, then so be it. You know, I gotta do what I gotta do to survive and to support my kids.
There are a lot of things that robots are learning to do these days. Take, for instance, watering a plant, watering a cup, giving a fist bump, and making it blow up. One of the more impressive feats of this machine that was recently revealed by a Chinese technology company is its ability to thread a needle. It's part of an effort to show that robots are getting more dexterous and more effective at interacting with people. What comes next? We're hanging by a thread. If robots become tailors, what will tailors do instead? In the garment world, things ain't always as they seem. You just can't replace an expert's eye with that of a machine. It's not keen, it's too green. It can't drape the perfect jean. Artificial sensing fashion sense when sensing had a preen. So if you're into tailoring and placing perfect stitches, don't be needled or be threatened by something that's got glitches. A Zeus on the loose, sewing things up for CNN 10.